If you will, please introduce yourself to the people.
So my name is Jarett Evans. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor. I'm founder of Revision Counseling and Wellness PLC.
How long have you been a licensed counselor?
So professionally since 2013, excuse me, since 2017.
Mm.
I've been in the field since 2013,
Mm.
and I felt like I've always been a counselor, to be honest. In terms of friends just coming to me about issues, problems, family issues, and just providing a listening ear. So even though professionally I was a therapist since 2017, I've been in the field since 2013, but I feel like I've been a therapist since what? Since I was 18, since high school at least,
Yeah.
when I had a lot of friends just felt comfortable just sharing.
Where are you from?
Born and raised in Charlotte, North Carolina,
Okay. And what high school did you go to?
East Mecklenburg High.
Okay, okay. And what college did you go to? Excuse me.
I started out at Shaw University. I always give credit to Shaw University because throughout high school, I didn't make the best grades academically, but Shaw University was the first school that took a chance on me. So I started at Shaw University. Then I transferred to UNC Pembroke. And through Pembroke, I was able to graduate in 3 years and pursue a master's after that, and in total was in Pembroke for about 6 years.
Wow. That's really amazing. The fact that number one, you have the HBCU and PWI experience.
Yes.
And shout out, as you mentioned, shout out to Shaw University, what
Shaw.
is known to be the grandfather of HBCUs, a graduate from North Carolina A&T, and so very significant for sure. We're not going to get into the grade situation. That resonates with me too. So it's amazing that along the way you've had to pivot. Speak to where you got the idea of opening your own practice and some of the hardships that you may have faced in having to pivot since 2020.
Most definitely. Great question. So a lot of my therapists may be able to relate. Starting out in the field, you're trying to get your full licensure. So you are really working long hours, low pay, seeing everybody and their mama, all the kids. And so starting out, I was really working very hard. I was grinding. I started out working like 2 jobs in terms of I had a full-time job and a part-time job just so I can get my hours. Then after changing different jobs, I started intensive in-home, then private practice. Then I worked in substance abuse. And one thing that was related through all of those experiences is that I was working extremely hard. And I felt as if my work-life balance, it wasn't balanced at all.
Mhm.
It was
Mhm.
more work than anything.
Mm.
So through those experiences from 2017 to about 2020 when the pandemic hit, I was working from home anyway. I was like, man, like let me look into potentially start my company. Um, Luckily, I knew people who started their own company, but this one black woman in particular who really encouraged me and motivated me to do it. She always kept saying about your worth, your value, your worth, and your value. And I was thinking, like, with the hard work that I was putting into the field, I really wasn't making a lot.
Mm.
Especially when you talk about bills and student loans, it's
Mhm.
like cost of living in Charlotte is
Yeah. Yeah.
so high. So then I looked into this idea, and then slowly but surely I started, you know, inquiring about the process. Then I've reached out to the board and understood what it took. Then um, I began to get panel and insurance panels, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cigna, and Aetna, and just being able to bit by bit be able to accomplish these things. And back in 2021, still in the pandemic, I decided to leave my full-time job and just do this wholeheartedly.
Mm. Congratulations on that as well. I don't imagine that to be an easy feat to just make that decision. How has it been since you made this your full time?
Definitely have its ups and downs. However, it's been very, very rewarding. So one thing I realized I value the most, especially when it comes to like in my profession or my career, it wasn't all about the money. It was more about the time and the freedom. So when I was able to understand that I value time and freedom rather than money, because as I said before, I was working hard a lot and I wasn't making a lot. So, but that timepiece, you can't get back. So I value that timepiece and being able to create my own schedule, be able to, essentially see who I want to see, and also make time to be in the community and be able to mentor kids, being able to, honestly just have a better work-life balance. I can go to the gym on a random Wednesday afternoon because I don't have any clients, or I probably saw my clients in the morning. Like that freedom just unlocked a new level of just living for me.
Let's talk about some of the community work. What does that look like for you?
So I'm real big on the community work in terms of, I don't know about you, but I when I was young, growing up as a teen, I've never met a black therapist. I never met a black social worker. I didn't really meet a black doctor, to be honest. So for me, I take that community aspect so seriously because people need to see that not only there are black therapists out here, but there are black professionals out here doing it. So to your original question, community work looked like to me not only being visible and present, but also being able to engage kids, women, men, just to provide a sense of encouragement, or just being present. For me, I partner with this nonprofit out of Greer Heights, and me just being there with the kids, and they know I'm a therapist. They know I come from work. So when I come, oh, here come the therapist, he's going to talk about my emotions, just that aspect, even though they, making a joke. But for me, they recognize when I come, well, I'm going to ask you how you doing. I'm going to ask you how you feeling. I'm going to ask you about your week. I'm going to ask you if there's anything on your mind. And just that alone, have these 13, 14, 15-year-olds thinking about, oh, there you go, he's going to ask me how I'm doing, so how am I doing? How am I feeling today? That little bit increases their emotional intelligence and self-awareness. And that, for me, means the world.
I love that. That's strong. What did the community look like when you were growing up, where you're from? You said that you didn't see the black therapist, the black doctor, really the black male influence in these roles. What did that look like?
So I have this little disclaimer I tell people, especially when I'm out speaking, doing public speaking. I only have one way, and I got to give it to you raw, real, whatever the case may be. So growing up, it was a little bit rough, in the east side of Charlotte. So, it wasn't nothing for me to go to a bus stop and seeing people like on the sidewalks. It wasn't nothing for me to hear, like gunshots or, gang activity. That wasn't unusual for me to see. So growing up, and this will also impact me as a therapist, if that's all you see growing up, then as a young kid, teenager, it's almost like, oh, that's what we're supposed to do. So I found myself, trying to be in these spaces, but I don't fit in. I don't fit in. I stand out, honestly. I joke and tell my friends all the time, like, I couldn't be a thug because I have a dimple. Like, like, seriously, I couldn't be a thug because I have a dimple because, like, and it's evident, too. You probably can't see it because of my beard, but, when I laugh or when I smile, it's deep, too. So it's like, well, you're going to be scared of a person with a dimple, But I say that to say this, like, I just knew I just never really fit in. I tried the baggy jeans, I tried the white tees, I tried the Air Forces and stuff, It's like what I've learned growing up, that only dimmed who I really was, like my light within. So growing up, I didn't really see a lot of people, take leadership, take charge at times. I grew up in a neighborhood where single parenthood was pretty prevalent. So you kind of grow up in a neighborhood, don't really see too many masculine men. You just kind of develop your own definition, and oftentimes that's based on what you see.
You used to play basketball too, right?
Yes, sir. State champs, 2008, East Mac. I just had to throw that in there. Shout out to Titus, Malik, uh, William, Johnny Jones, Paris, Jeremy, excuse me if I forget y'all, but, shout out to all y'all.
That's love, man. That's love. Shout out to all those guys. Like, yeah.
All those guys, man.
Being from Charlotte, you run into them, especially if you're on the sports field or on the court, you're going to run into, as mentioned before, a lot of things are going to overlap. And so I appreciate you even mentioning that because it speaks to the history that's even been made in this city, right? We come from a dynamic space and from dynamic places. And I think that it's important to highlight those. But I think what's even more beautiful is when you're pointing out how everything wasn't sweet. People who are in Charlotte now, because Charlotte's a whole different place, I think that they may get a different type of idea, if you will. And it's good that we are able to clarify what that looks like. When did you get into the idea of learning yourself, being aware as much as you could of self? Because I love that you pointed out you tried the baggy jeans, the white tees, the forces. It was a whole area. So it resonates a lot.
Yeah.
When did you get into the exploration of self?
It's a great question. I'm going to try to condense this as possible. But exploration of self, it all started, honestly, at Shaw University when I was 19.
Mm-hmm.
First time being away from my parents, first time being away from my neighborhood. You had no choice but to figure yourself out. You had nothing but time at that point.
Right.
So I got into some things. During the time, I got into faith a lot. I felt like that was necessary at that time for me to have a foundation because I was still discovering like who I am. And the only, I guess, image or representation of, black man I saw was often negative at times. So being in a faith-based organization, aka church, I was able to kind of see like men, and not only, men from a leadership perspective, but also men who are, worshiping or singing and stuff like that. That did a lot for me at that time. And then I would say another pivotal moment would be like 2016. 2016 was when I saw my last police execution on video in terms of Philando Castile. He was a unarmed black man in Minneapolis who died, by the hands of law enforcement. And I would say that really changed me. During that time, I was in Princeton, doing the summer camp. And I remember, like, after unwillingly seeing that video, my whole mood changed. And the boys that was there that was mentoring, I said, Jay, what's wrong, man? At the time, I wasn't able to communicate my feelings effectively like now. So I said, I'm good, man, just nothing. But that was really eating away at me. And why that's pivotal for me, because I just did not understand why this keep happening to us specifically. If I'm real, you don't really see too many white men getting gunned down by the police. You don't see too many Asian men get gunned down by the police. You don't see too many Hispanic people getting gunned down by the police. And if they are, it's not broadcasted the way that it is. So why am I keep seeing these things? Because psychologically, it does something to me. So that's where I really try to understand my blackness and how I'm being perceived, how I'm being watched, whatever the case may be. Because I'm 6'5" black male, pretty big. And I remember, being so soft-spoken. I usually not necessarily get criticized. People say, "Well, you're so soft-spoken, to be so, tall and stuff." Then I'm thinking like, how else am I supposed to be besides being myself? So that was a pivotal moment for me in 2016 because that was a moment where I decided to learn more about my history, learn more about my people, learn more about where we came from, learn, just us as black people and how resilient we are, not just in America, but across the diaspora. And that was the moment that changed me.
Very specific and profound. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because I remember 2014, Mike Brown, and before Mike Brown, it was Trayvon Martin, and then 2016, as you mentioned, Philando Castile. Rest in power to all the names that are not mentioned, because there's so many of them. Yet and still, I had the same thought process. Why is this what's being broadcast? And by the time it got to 2015, I knew it was intentional. I had started to do studies in religious studies, social, real social studies, right? Psychology, sociology, histories of migrations of people, and so that resonates a lot, and I appreciate you sharing that. When did you get rid of this idea and feeling to be cool? Like you talked about things that you mentioned earlier, talking about fitting in. I still feel parts of that sometimes, because it's as if I don't fit in, I can't connect with certain people. When did you relinquish that to be able to say, you know what, this is my big picture goal. This is the impact that I have on people is what's most important. And I'm going to come back to that Princeton part. You said that very casually, but that's Princeton is Princeton, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. So I guess the cool part, I'm gonna be honest, I still deal with that too. You know, I sometimes I don't know if I buy J's because I like them or because it's a social. Yeah, it's like, you know, I don't know why I buy the J's, but I do like them though.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I do find, you know, myself buying them a lot more. But I mean, I feel like that's an ongoing process. At the core, it's more about being comfortable with yourself and the skin that you're in. And more, especially as a therapist, I'm encouraging people who may have anxiety and depression to be more comfortable, to be more balanced and present. And after doing that almost, 4 or 5 times a week, or a day, well, not that day, but 4 or 5 times a week, it's like, you got to talk to yourself too. So I guess the more I got comfortable with myself, is the more I try to understand about my history and who we become. Because if you really think about it, I consider myself like a sociologist at times too, because I do study societies. So you really think about like why, and I'm not down to anybody who does it. And I'm gonna just throw that disclaimer, I'm not down to it. But if you just take just an objective look at things, why do we wear these things that we wear? Why are we attracted to the Mercedes? Like why are we attracted to the Jordans? Why do we have the chains? Why do we have the grills? Why would we have these things? Like if you really take an objective look at it, like who you representing? What culture are you representing? Because oftentimes, and this is my opinion, when you think of like black culture, for me at least, I feel as if our culture is making lemonade out of lemons. We take the worst that society has given us, and we make it positive. We may create a song, we may create a dance, we may create a little style, an energy about us. But we take an objective look back, like we literally are giving the worst and we make it the best. So when you think about like what's cool and all that stuff is subjective. And I guess with my work, working in the school system and dealing with kids and stuff, like they try so hard to be cool, to fit in. But who are you trying to impress? Like, after next year or 5 years, 10, you won't even speak to these people anymore. So we are so consumed with trying to be cool and trying to fit in. But what I learned that within that, we lose ourselves. Because now we're looking back and we don't even know who we are. Because we try so hard to keep up with the latest trends and what they say on TikTok and Instagram. But when all these things fade, because these trends would fade, what do we have left? And I hope I don't butcher this, but it reminds me of this African proverb when it says that, pretty much like, I know I'm going to butcher this. Like, I really wish I can look it up real quick. But it's pretty much like, if the tree is moved by the wind, then it doesn't have any foundation. Like what makes a tree is like having that foundation. Therefore, it could be, a wind or a hurricane, whatever the case, it's not going to move because the foundation is solid. And for me, understanding my foundation, getting back to my original culture, or getting back to, knowledge of self. That's what I'm comfortable with, and that's essentially what makes me cool or makes me comfortable with just not trying to fit in as much.
I love the metaphor that you gave about the tree, right? The African proverb.
I really want to find it though right now.
No, we might have to by the time we put this out. We might have to. I know exactly what you mean. I want you to speak to those people who think the roots are too deep, so why would I ever go and explore? There have been plenty of times where we're having a conversation like this, honestly, and there are people who would term and deem this conversation to be very deep.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, that's just too deep for me. What do you say to people like that, whether it be from a professional side or even just from a person? You know what I mean? Because I think it's important too.
Most definitely. For those who may feel like this type of conversation is too deep and just want to have fun and live life, I mean, what's your alternative? Like, if this conversation is considered deep, then what's your alternative? To not have a deep conversation, then what's not a deep conversation? What we talk about, my favorite color. What we talking about, how we feel. Like, I definitely want you to consider how you feel, but one thing I try to teach my clients that, feelings come and go. If I give you $100 right now, you may feel good until I tell you it's counterfeit. Now you're like, why are you gonna do that to me? It's like feelings comes and goes, up and down. It's like there's something that you may need to anchor, and feelings may not always be the accurate indicator or an accurate barometer of how you should be or how things should go.
Uh-oh, we're dabbling into troubled waters now. Logos, ethos, pathos, logic, emotion, etc. There have been so many conversations as of late through social media I've found where I call them unprocessed emotions.
Talk to me.
Where even for you say, hey, your emotions are I have learned as of late to stop saying unprocessed emotions because that in that statement I may be negating someone's emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I personally feel as if logic is what rules with empathy and compassion, sure. What do we say to people who are leading with their emotions and really don't even know a difference? We're going to prioritize how we feel versus what actually is. How do we deal with that?
So, just by hearing what you say, I love the way you put it. Emotions are only a part of you. It's not all of you. Like, for me, I consider myself a holistic therapist. Mm-hmm. So I try to address the mind, the body, and the spirit. All of them to me is equal. Like, imagine if I just focus on my physical health and negate my mental health and my spiritual health. Like, how do you think I will be as a person? Or if I just focus on my spiritual health, but just negate my mental and emotional. Like, I see these podcasts all the time, and we talk about, they grew up in a culture where, we don't talk about mental health, you just pray it away. That's us just focusing on the spiritual and not necessarily the emotional or mental. So think about your emotions as a part of you, but not all of you. So when you think about your emotions, just try to consider your mental and spiritual as well too. Because just focus on one, you're going to remain unbalanced. And as a therapist, I really encourage people to find their own balance.
That's amazing. And it resonates because even coming out of high school, right, the goal was to be this well-rounded student. Mm-hmm. So when you speak to your methodology of psychology, it's a well-rounded person is what you're trying to get people to be. What are some of the struggles? What's some of the dark areas that people don't see of the counselor, of the therapist? The things that aren't nearly as glamorous?
It's a loaded question, man.
It is.
No, I like it. I love it. I love these talks. Like, it just, I try to make sure cause I can go. My I want to make sure I'm also presenting myself well too. But the dark side of therapy, in my opinion and through my experience, is we are really dealing with some broken people, like people who are searching for healing, but they just don't know how to heal. And it's very layered because it stems from how they was raised, their environment, you know, parents, genetics. It's so multifaceted, you know, and how complex we are as people. But the dark side of it is like we are really dealing with people who are really hurting and who has been hurt by people, because I truly believe hurt people hurt people. So because I'm hurt, you know, I'm just gonna go outside and now I'm gonna hurt someone else, and they may be really genuinely like feeling you, and then now you hurt them, and now they are F these dudes. Like it's just a never-ending cycle. But at what point do we as a people just say, you know what, enough is enough? Because if we take an objective look again about our lifestyle, or whether you take an objective look at your lifestyle, like, is it serving you? Or are we just responding based off of hurt and fear? So dealing with those types of people, and especially those who genuinely want to be healed, but as a therapist, I'm somewhat limited, you know, because, you know, definitely from an ethical perspective, I can't do a lot like I want to. That's why I try to partner with like other organizations and nonprofit to provide that support that therapy may not be able to. But just the dark side of it, man, just for me as a therapist, seeing the connection and why you are like that, or why do you respond like that, for a better term. And it all comes from a place. So if you are listening to this and you feel like there's some areas, if you could be honest with yourself, that there are some areas of your life that you just want to change, whether it's in relationships, or how do you respond to family members, how you respond to stress, adversity, your career, or depression, anxiety, whatever. If you can look at your life and say, you know what, I wish I showed up differently, or I wish I didn't respond that way, there's always a root cause to it. Like for every for every reaction is an initial action. You know, if I go to the doctor and say, hey doc, my leg's hurting, what's the first question they're gonna ask? A qualified, like a true doctor would ask, well, what happened to it? They're not just gonna be like, oh, well, you need surgery. Well, you don't even know what happened to it. You know, so as a therapist, I really do encourage my clients to, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to want better. But for me, they're always always an action to the reaction. And oftentimes we focus on the reaction, but not the initial action.
Very sound, very sound. As much as I try not to give my subjective viewpoint, I generally do in my responses. But it's because, again, we're having this conversation. And as much as the viewers learn, I learn from the immediate interaction. So I'm very thankful. The question that I had originally can come off somewhat negative, and so I'm going to give you the altered question as well as the original question. The original question was, in your approach to community, you mentioned the people. I love those thoughts. Does it ever seem like it's overwhelming or just too much and you can't really have the impact that you want to have? So the revised and altered question is, what is a breakthrough moment for your clients?
I like that first question. Now I'm going to go to the second question. Okay. So you mentioned about community. Can you say that one more time, please?
For sure. Does it ever feel as if the mission or your plight, your goal, it's too overwhelming, it's too much to accomplish? You may or may not have the impact that you aspire to have.
It's a great question. I truly believe that at first it was overwhelming because that's why I kept putting it off. I can just do it after I get my license, or I could do it after I get the house, or I can do it after I'm more financially stable. So you just keep pushing it off and kicking the can down the road, but you never really do it because there's a part of you that feel like it's just too much. But one thing I've learned, I think I realized my influence as a black man early on in my career. And this when I was in the field of mental health back in 2013. I remember going to these middle schools, and I was looking for a job, but I was there. And when I walked into the school and classrooms and the cafeteria, as soon as I walk in, every head kept looking at me. And I was thinking, like, what the kids looking at me for? Like, what I got going on? But I say that to say this, like, when I would walk through those halls and encourage a kid and just give them a little fist and they bump it's just that little bit. Just for me, I realized, oh, they don't know me, but just simply me being there, encouraging them, that means something to them. So I realized I realized my influence as a black man, my divine nature, my masculine nature, and I embrace it. So, do I feel like it's hard? I try not to put the weight of the world on my shoulders. I try to take the cape off. I'm not Superman, but I try to make small impacts, because when you are able to make these small mini impacts, eventually you can look back and say, "Oh, that's a big impact." If you start walking now, eventually you will hit a mile. Like, a mile could be your goal for the day. But all you have to do is start taking the step. So I try not to overwhelm myself with the overall big picture goal. Like, I'm not a messiah. I'm not out here. I'm not trying to be president. I'm just out here trying to make an impact, a positive impact in my community. Because if I know if I'm able to encourage that kid to keep going, to not give up in school, just maybe they may go to school and get a job where they can take their family out of poverty. Or if I'm able to encourage that dad who's dealing with substance use, like, it's okay, but don't succumb to your addiction, then maybe that father can be a better, father to his kids and a better partner to his spouse. And that right there can change the household. And if I can keep finding ways to impact the household, then I could look back and now a community is changed, or a street is changed, or a neighborhood is changed. So it's more so me finding moments where I can be impactful and not put the weight of the world on my shoulder as if I have to impact the whole city or the whole state or the whole nation. But you just never know. And I always think about the Tupac quote. They say, I may not be the spark to change, I may not be able to change the world, but I could be the spark to influence someone to change the world. And that's kind of like my mentality. It's like, I may not be able to change the world, but I may talk to a future Barack Obama. I may talk to a future Malcolm X, or I may talk to a future Marcus Garvey that could change the world. I know that was a two-part question. I hope I touched on it.
No, you did for sure. Outside of that, are there identifiable breakthrough moments for your clients where you can see, I see the shift?
Yes. So therapy is a process. I tell people it's not going to be overnight. It took us a while to get to this space. It may take us a while, if not more, to get out of it. But at the bare minimum, what I try to provide as a therapist is just a safe space to just be. To just be. Whatever's on your mind, whatever you're feeling, just share it. And when they believe me, take me up on that and just be, slowly but you just see the weight just being lifted. Because how often do we have moments where we can just be? I mean, especially as men, I'm proud that 80% of my caseload is black males. So especially as men, how often do you have an opportunity just to be without fearing someone judging you or thinking you less than a man? Like, at the bare minimum, that's what I provide. And that right there is progress for me.
Have you always been of the nature that time and efforts and actions will compound. One ripple in the pond can become a large ripple, so to speak. Or is that not even your focus all the time? Is it literally just the impact with the person that's in front of you right then, right there?
So obviously in the therapy setting, I'm just focused on that one person. I really am checking my expectation because it's not about me. It's all about my client and about what they want to see their life become. So I'm automatically checking my expectation because it's not about me. So to answer your question, it's all about them. Like for them, if they have been consistently dealing with depression weeks on end, and they, have, days where they can't get up out of bed or days they don't want to, take a shower and stuff, for them to, get up and to smile or to even attend the therapy session is enough for me. And for me, that's progress for them. Because oftentimes I think about what if I wasn't there, or what if they did not have an opportunity to share or to be open? What would they be doing? More than likely, they would probably be doing the same things, which is being isolated, not really talking to anybody, not really eating, or whatever the case may be. But that's a very extreme example. But I really do try to measure my success on an individual basis, unless I'm in a community where I'm partnered with people for a greater goal.
Okay. Take me back to the summer you spent at Princeton. What was that about?
Princeton University. Kid from the east side of Charlotte.
Yeah.
I went to Princeton University. So long story short, that was a summer camp. So all I knew at that time, in between schools, not in between school, in between the semesters, summer, you take the summer off. I knew I wanted a job. I didn't want to go back home to the east side of Charlotte because for me, at that time, I felt like it didn't serve me. I didn't have nothing to really come home to outside of, be at my mom's house.
Yeah.
I don't really talk to a lot of people I grew up with anymore, so there was nothing to come home to. So I applied for the, I hope I don't butcher it, but it was a W.E.B. Du Bois. It was a summer camp, but it was more like an academic enrichment camp. And I really wish I know the proper title.
The Fellows program or something?
It was something
like
that
that.
sort.
Okay.
So I applied for it, and honestly, I didn't think I was going to get it. I was just trying to do something.
Yeah.
But I was able to schedule an interview, and through the interview, I remember I was outside. I think I was outside of my dorm room. It was so loud in the dorm, so I was outside, and I presented well. Then I came back for a second interview, and then I was able to go. So, but why I highlight that moment from the east side of Charlotte, man, you hear schools like Princeton and Harvard, and you don't really think that's a reality for you. But for me to go there and to walk on those campuses and just be there, I felt like, this is possible. I didn't feel as if I dealt with imposter syndrome at that time. I felt like, this possible? Yeah, I never forget, there was this African-American professor. I think he was in the School of Divinity. He was a black man. And I was just talking to him because I was like, I didn't really see too many black professors at the time, but I went there, I talked to him, and I think he was kind of trying to recruit me in a sense. And I was like, you don't know where I came from, you don't know my grades and stuff. So, but that right there it kind of lit the light bulb in me. It's like, man, this is possible. So by me being at Princeton, even though it was a summer camp, talking to a black man who was a dean of a department there, I was like, man, like, what's hard? Like, what's really impossible? And it's not like I wasn't really checking for the opportunity. I just applied. But I feel like the Most High, kind of opened the doors for me.
Absolutely.
I did it for 2 years though.
2 years.
Yeah, I was there one summer, then I came back the next summer.
Impact. Mhm.
Shout out to the foundation, man. W.B. Du Bois, man.
Always have commentary, but I also like for strong statements and opportunities to stand on their own for what they are. You went to a PWI and an HBCU.
Yeah,
I love that you mentioned W.E.B. Du Bois. Du Bois.
yeah, Du Bois.
What are your thoughts on the discussion? I've said this a few times on this specific segment. It's not an HBCU versus PWI debate.
Mm.
What are your thoughts on the discussion about which one is better, which one is more what are your thoughts on that, considering you have real-time experience on from both sides?
School is about what you make it at the end of the day. Now, I try not to get into those debates, which one better or not. At the end of the day, it's which one serves you.
There we go.
For me, I will always be grateful for Shaw University. I mean, always. Like, if I ever came across some money, $1 million, I would give to them first because they took a chance on me. So I probably wouldn't be here if it was for Shaw University, because most universities was like, well, you don't qualify, this and that. But with Shaw, they had this mandatory study hall for freshmen. Changed my life because first time I ever studied, really. And on top of that, I saw people just like me, black boys, black young men, black young women, all in the cafeteria studying. That did something to me. I want to say the first time I entered a library was at Shaw University. I mean, like, just genuinely just going, just to study, and that changed me as well too. So it's about what serves you, man. At the end of the day, like, obviously the PWIs have more funding, they have more money, so their facilities may be more updated, whatever the case may be. But if that moves you, by all means, go. But for me, it was the history, it was the culture. Shaw University had a medical school. That blew my mind. And then when you understand the history of HBCUs, you will realize why it's so important for us to maintain them. And to not only maintain them, but to get our very best to go. As teachers, administrators, students, like, we all need to go and get back. Like, imagine if a black celebrity chose a HBCU and just gave to the endowment. What would that do for that school? Like, and then I understood the history of Shaw, because it was mandatory. You had to learn the history about Shaw. The oldest HBCU in the South. And having the medical school and the nursing department, they had all these things because nobody else was giving our people that opportunity. So if you understand that aspect, why wouldn't you be grateful for it? I said earlier that I never seen a black therapist or a black social worker or a black doctor, medical doctor, but Shaw University were producing those, those physicians at a high rate. But what changed? Funding. It's not that those institutions are like heads and shoulders above, better than ours. We just need a little funding, in my opinion.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and funding. I've noticed that to be the main difference on each level that I've taken note of and mentioned too. Do you feel as if there's anything that I haven't asked you, or is there anything that you want to share? And please let the people know where to find you.
I enjoy the conversation, bro. I really do enjoy it. And like just having moments like this where I'm able to just relax and just speak, man, that means the world to me. As far as I think you touched a lot of things, man. I could talk all day, man. But I definitely want to be respectful of time. But outside of that, man, I just want to encourage the people, man. Like, as a people, it's nothing wrong with wanting better. It's nothing wrong with understanding what benefits you and what doesn't. There's so many ways I can take this, man. I'm trying to just
Give them all.
for my ladies, I just want to encourage you. Like, it's okay to be you. You don't have to succumb to what social media says, or we don't have to subscribe to their standard of beauty. Like, it's okay to be natural. It's okay to have your natural hair. It's okay to have your braids. If you want to call it your meeks, whatever. Yeah, it's okay to have these things, man. Like, I just imagine we just let go of that pressure, man, and just be. Like, you don't have to look a certain way. You ain't gotta do these surgeries. Now, if you do, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm saying, like, it's not a requirement to be beautiful. It's not a requirement to attract attention. Like, you alone, being a black woman, your mind, that's enough. For my fellas, I love y'all, man. Y'all are the reason why I started therapy. Because you don't have to succumb to these images that you see. I'm not a gangster. I'm not a thug. Like, that's what I felt like they were pushing me towards. You ain't got to be out here, being all hard all the time. You ain't got to prove yourself. The biggest thing I would tell black man, you ain't got to prove to you ain't got to keep proving yourself. You ain't got to prove you tough. You ain't got to prove that you belong. You feel like you ain't got to sit at the table, create your own table, man. Like, you are divine. Like you are the creator. Like, you can create just by speaking things, by manifesting things. I'm not just saying that. I'm for real. I truly believe this. I'm a living testament of that. Like, whatever you want, whatever you desire, you can speak it and begin to see it move and shift in your favor. So you don't have to keep proving yourself. Take that pressure off you. You ain't got to prove that you're a man. We know you're a man. Handle your business. Lead. That's what makes you a man. Take care of your responsibilities, man. Make sure your brother and your sister's good, man. We good. And I subscribe to that Ubuntu philosophy, man. Like, out of many, there's one. So it's like, if we can just get back to that communal aspect and making sure our brothers and our sisters is good without getting anything from them, I think that our whole society, our communities would change. So just my encouragement for our people, man. Just know that you are loved. Just know that you are supported. Even if you don't feel that, there are people specifically who got into this field for you. And if you are courageous enough just to reach out, just to say, you know what, I'm going to just give it a try. I'm gonna see what this is about. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, at least you can say you tried. But put your best foot forward and begin to make these connections about your life. Why do we respond in this way? Why do we get angry? Why do we get depressed at times? Why do we feel not fulfilled? Begin to talk to someone, and let's see what happens. I mean, we have one life. Why not get the most out of it? If you're interested and want to reach out, you can just reach out, revisioncw.com. That's Revision Counseling and Wellness, PLLC. You can find me on Psychology Today, Therapy for Black Men. I'm very accessible. But if I'm also connected with a network of black male therapists. It's called the Black Male Therapists of Charlotte. And if I may not be the right fit, I guarantee we could find you one. We could find you a therapist if you want it. Support is here. Care is here. Love is here. if you want it, of course.
Jarett Evans, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure, man. Peace, man.
Absolutely. We look forward to our next conversation.
Likewise.